Hey ya, welcome to the Den of Alacrity. I'm Mac and I need a haircut. Today we're going to be talking about D&D. If you're new here, on this channel we like to enthusiastically share and teach each other about our hobbies. If that sounds like something you would be into, then why don't you tap that subscribe button and leave a comment down below. Every time you do, a D&D player somewhere in the world gets a natural 20. Do it for the rolls. This video is part 2 of our character creation series. In part 1, I showed you how to get ideas for your characters and how to combine inspirations in interesting ways. We also talked a bit about how to build a personality for your character. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'm going to make sure it gets linked somewhere up here, so go check that one out first if you're just here looking for ideas. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the choices you have to make when you create a character. When you sit down for that first D&D session, your DM is going to ask you a bunch of questions about what class you want to be, what race you want to be, what skills you're after, maybe even what abilities you would like to put high scores into. And in today's video, we're going to take you through all of that. So we're going to be covering quite a bit in today's video, and so if you want to jump to a specific part that you want information about, or if you're just coming back and you want to refresh your knowledge, I'm going to put some timestamps up here. You'll also find them in the description, so you can just jump to whichever part you need right now. You can think of these two videos as an intro to your first session of D&D. Character creation should of course involve your DM and your party. However, there is so much information to take in before that point that I want to help you make sense of it all. So, without any further ado, let's jump right into the choices you need to make. Let's start with race. When it comes to race in D&D, I like to think of it on a scale of real to fantasy. This is a nice way to kind of compare the different races and also to find out how much extra lore there will be behind the choice that you've made. Let's start at the top here. We have humans. Now you should be familiar with these because they're quite populous on the planet Earth. Then we have halflings, or as Tolkien called them, hobbits. These are smaller humanoids with or without hairy feet. They are really lucky and can reroll ones, so good race to go with. Let's skip over this middle bit for now and head down to here where we've got dwarves. So dwarves are kind of like tiny humans, but I would never say that to one of their faces because they have a long and storied history. They tend to live in mountainous areas and are skilled craftsmen and proud warriors. Next we have elves. Elves in D&D are just like the elves you kind of see in Lord of the Rings, the misty ones with the on-fleek aesthetic. They are ancient beings who live lifespans that make them seem immortal to humans, although they're not actually immortal, they just live for a really long time. Now that we have the bones of the scale set up, let's go fill in some of these gaps. So there are a few races that have been made through interbreeding. Let's start with half-elves. So half-elves have elven genes in their bloodline somewhere. It doesn't have to be a direct descendant. Strong elf genes can carry through generations. They tend to share some of the magical abilities with their forebearers, but will often live in human society rather than with elves. They still have pointy ears, don't worry. We then have half-orcs. Now orcs in D&D can either be Tolkien-esque, where they're a bit, goblin-y, or they can be more warcrafty. Half-orcs tend to be the latter, with tusks and bigger frames, an indication of their mixed lineage. They can be kind of outcasts for their relationship with a dangerous race, but also can be fine functioning members of society. We also have tieflings, so tieflings who are from a line who long ago mixed their blood with the head devil, Asmodeus, and the results are clear to see. Tieflings often have horns, they have coloured skin, and they have tails, so in my opinion they look pretty badass. We also have dragonborns, which are basically just like humanoid dragons without the wings. They have mixed their bloodline with dragons, and the colour of their skin indicates the type of breath weapon that they have, so they can breathe fire, acid, cold. There are also a bunch of animal-based races, although most of them come in extra additional kind of material, but you can get lizards, birds, cats, turtles, basically you name it. And there are so many homebrew races as well, so if none of these fits exactly what you're thinking, definitely have a look online. Somebody might have made a homebrew race that fits it a bit better. Have a look at your options and try and note down what race you think would work for them. A class in D&D is what your character does. It's like their profession, you can think of it. So there are a bunch of different options for this, and I like to think of it on one simple axis: spellcasting. It kind of splits them into 3 categories. So you have fighters, you have spellcasters, and you have a bit of bothers. Let's start with the fighters. First you have barbarians. Barbarians are angry and aggressive fighters who run headfirst into battle. Your main ability is to rage, which allows you to destroy enemies while taking extremely reduced damage. Next you have fighters. I know this can be a bit confusing because that's the name of the category, but just bear with me. Fighters use their skill and wits to come out of a battle victorious. They tend to be masters of their craft and also know battlefield tactics. Next we have the monks, who use hand-to-hand combat to deliver fast but brutal flurries of punches. They may not be the beefiest HP-wise, but they're really great at delivering huge blows and stunning enemies before they dash out of reach. Finally, we have rogues. Now these are your sneaky types. Not the kind of people to be in the middle of the battlefield, more likely to be on the outskirts, hiding and shooting from a distance. They also make great assassins, able to sneak up on their foes and deliver huge damage. Right, that's the fighters over with. Do you think any of those fits your character? On to the spellcasters. Let's start with the nerds. Wizards are not all nerds, but they do get their power from study and practice. They pore over ancient texts to learn the mythical arts that have been passed down through generations. They tend to be quite bookish, but can also handle themselves in a fight, but they also excel at intellectual pursuits. Sorcerers are the wild ones. Their source of magic comes from an ancient power that was bestowed upon them or found their way into their bloodline somewhere. You can't learn to be a sorcerer, it's something you just are. Warlocks are spellcasters that acquired their power through striking up a bargain with an ancient being. Such bargains do not come for free, so warlocks are often tethered to their patrons and asked to perform quests or to further their patrons' ambitions. They are, however, able to borrow the power of their patron to cast spells and bend the world to their will. Druids are magic users that focus on the natural world and the power inherent within it. They commune with nature, and this is how they get their magical abilities. They can transform into beasts. The size and ferocity of these differs between druids. They can all call on the power of nature to protect themselves or their allies and to deal some serious punishment if needs be. Bards are performers, entertainers, and the final spellcasters that we will look at. Bards tend to lace their magic into their words or music to charm those around them. They can also inspire their teammates to give them a bonus and are usually the mouthpiece when it comes to negotiations. Right, now that you've heard about the spellcasters, do those fit any of the character ideas that you had? Make a note of them if they did. Let's head on to the bit of boths. These classes have access to spells, but often need to bolster their combat prowess with physical and martial ability. First, we have paladins. Paladins are holy warriors blessed with a mantle of power from their chosen deity. They can use this power to inspire friends and to strike fear into the heart of enemies. They make great battlefield commanders. They're well known for leading charges on the battlefield and also being able to pack a punch themselves. Next, we have clerics. Clerics are also holy warriors, but they tend to focus more on healing and aiding allies. They too have a chosen deity and they can access some holy spells. But they're also known to use a club or a quarterstaff to defend themselves if they need to. Finally, you have rangers. Now these are skilled hunters and trackers that specialise in taking down monsters that will make most adventurers wet their pants. Rangers are skilled with long-range weapons like bows and crossbows and even guns if your world allows it. And they also have access to spells that are similar to a druid, so all to do with nature, and that can either kind of hide their allies or help them as they're traversing difficult terrain. Whew. Right, we made it. If you don't think that your character neatly fits into one of the boxes I've described, you can also look at multiclassing. Multiclassing just means that your character has more than one class. As you go through your adventure, you'll gain experience points, and eventually you'll level up. When you level up, you can choose which class you would like to put the level into. So, if you were a level 1 fighter, and then you got to level 2, you could choose to put a level in Rogue, for example. Now there is a bit of a trade-off to be had here, because every time you take a level in another class, you lose getting that level in your main class. And some people also use a technique called dipping, which basically just means you take a level or 2 in a class to gain some of their abilities, but you don't intend to really follow it that far down the tree. Multiclassing can be a great way to expand your character's skill set, but it can get quite tricky. So if this is your first character and you're worried about the intricacies, I would just stick to one to start with. You can always multiclass later down the line. Let's have a look at this character sheet in a bit more depth. There's a lot on here, so let's break it down. We're just going to focus on these 3 areas for today. Right, first at the top here, you have your name, race and class, which is the stuff we discussed earlier. You also have a place for your alignment. Now this used to be really important and it kind of dictated what your character was like. There are 2 axes for alignment. So you have good to evil, which dictates how your character weighs up their needs versus other people's needs. And then you also have lawful to chaotic. And that says how much your character conforms to the structures and social norms around them. Lawful characters tend to kind of live and thrive within rules and systems that govern the way that they live, and chaotic characters tend to only follow their own rules. In newer versions of D&D, this has kind of been overhauled by the backstory element, where you get to kind of create your character's backstory and that affects the game. So it's not as important, but it is a good starting block for thinking how your character would work. Cool, so that's the top bit done, right? We can move that one out of the way. Let's bring the most important bit in. So these are your ability scores, and this is what the rest of the sheet hinges upon. These are numbers that usually range between 0 to 20, and they dictate how good your character is at certain aspects of adventuring. You have strength, which dictates how much you can carry, how much you can push and pull around, and also your kind of ferocity and strength with weapons in battle. Dexterity is how fast you are, how quick you react to danger, and how good you are at doing backflips. Constitution is how generally healthy you are, how much it would take to poison you, how much health you have. Don't sleep on Constitution. Next we have intelligence, which is how smart you are. You can think of it like book smarts, right? So this is how easily you can recall facts that you've learned in the past. And it will tie into lots of skills that are to do with kind of general knowledge. Next we have wisdom. Now you can think of this as like street smarts, right? Like how inherently wise are you? Inner smarts. How much do you get people? How much do you trust? How intuitive are you? Then we have charisma, and this is how likable your character is, how much they can influence the emotions of other people through persuasion or deception or intimidation, and just generally how likable you are. Now each of these stats will be decided when you create your character. You'll have to roll for them or point by, your DM will go through it with you. Some of the classes have particular stats that you need to watch out for. So I'm going to go through those now, and for your characters I want you to note down which abilities are important. Barbarians need to be strong. Fighters should be dexterous or strong, or maybe both. Both monks and rogues should be dexterous and wise. Wizards need to be intelligent, whereas sorcerers and bards need to be charismatic. Rangers should be dexterous and wise, whereas paladins should be strong and wise. These are your skills. Now these are the things that more often than not your DM will be asking you to roll for. These are the things that your characters can do, their specific talents. Now I'm not going to read through this whole list, I feel like you guys have probably had enough of lists by this point. But I just want to pick out a few of these that are either harder to understand for new players or I think particularly important. Arcana doesn't usually make sense to new players, but it's how good you are at magic. So it could be detecting magic in the world around you, but it could also be how skilled you are with your own magic if you want to do something a bit fancy with your spells. Insight is really useful. You will be asked to roll for insight if you want to get somebody's true intentions, or you want to try and see how much your character would know about a given situation, or how much they could kind of put pieces together. Perception or investigation are, I would say, almost essential. So it depends on whether your character is more intelligent or wise, which one of these you choose, but these are the things that you will use to kind of look around the world and search for clues. Perception strictly is kind of looking around, how much do you see, how much of the information that you see can you process, and then investigation is more when you're trying to like find something specific or put clues together. But often DMs will just kind of let you swap between these. That's my personal opinion. DMs out there might be like, no, never, but in general, if you can find a good reason why it's an investigation, you could probably use it. History is how good you can recall facts that might be from your history or the world at large, especially if your backstory is somebody who's quite learned, if you come from university or something like that. We have nature, which is tracking things, how good you are at kind of spotting different plants or finding your way through the woods, how good you are at getting yourself unlost. And then finally survival. Now this is more strict, what you would consider survival skills, right? If you need to find things to make a fire, if you want to try and avoid dangerous obstacles in an unknown place, probably a survival check. Have a read through this list, pause the video now. I want you to pick about 4 of these to have an eye on for your class. Not all classes will get to pick 4 of them, but in general, you're probably within a few levels be able to pick up at least proficiencies in at least 4 of these. Whoa, that was a lot of information to cover in one video. We've looked at classes, different races, we broke down a character sheet to look at ability scores and skills, we talked about what abilities different classes need to have access to. Hopefully you've now got 3 really well-rounded out ideas for characters to take with you to your first session. Again, I would love to hear about the characters you guys are making or any particular parts of this video that you enjoyed, so leave me a comment down below. I'll be hanging out there after this is done. Before you go, I've got 2 recommendations for you as a next step on your D&D journey. The first one comes from a fellow YouTuber, That Gamer Ajax. or Ajax. I haven't actually asked him whether you pronounce the J or not. He's made a series of basics videos that take you through some of the classes in a bit more detail. So if you're still stuck trying to decide between a few classes, definitely go check out his series. They're awesome, they're really short videos, and he manages to really succinctly get across the main aspects of each class. Awesome work. The second recommendation is for those of you that want to look into the character sheet a bit more. There's a really popular YouTuber called JoeCat who does these crap guide to D&D videos, and his crap guide to a character sheet is absolutely amazing. So if you want to learn and get a lot more detail in an animated style while also being made fun of a little bit, then definitely go check his video out. I'm going to link both of those down in the description, so make sure you go check those out as the next steps. That's all from me for today, but don't worry, there's more D&D content coming your way. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to be looking at role-playing. So make sure you're subscribed and follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well, just so you know when those are coming out. Anyway, until next time, my beautiful army of internet frogs, get ready for adventure.